Hi, my name is Logan Wykowski, and this is my language and cultural contact presentation for Spanish 118. So for my language and cultural contact presentation, I decided to watch a couple films about 2 hours in length, and then I also listened to a lot of Spanish music, so I decided to translate some of the lyrics from a song that I've been listening to a lot lately, Tusa by Carol G and Nicki Minaj. So first is Roma. It's directed by Alfonso Cuarón. It won 3 Oscars in 2019, and I think it's pretty clear to see why. It's a very good movie, and I suggest that you watch it if you're interested. It takes place in 1970s Mexico City in a neighborhood called Roma, and it's based on true events, so it goes into a lot of the history of the town and the people that lived there. So some of the words that I learned were preocupar, which means to worry, peligroso or peligrosa, which means danger, playa, which is beach, ola, which is wave, librero, which is bookshelf or bookcase, and then solo or sola, which means to be alone. Worrying, danger, being alone are a lot of themes that were pretty central to the film and are consistent throughout. Um, some of the cultural nuances that I picked up from the film. Los Halcones were a paramilitary group that was in Mexico City in the 1970s. One of these scenes actually goes into a real event that happened in 1971. Los Halcones committed a massacre of about 120 student protesters. Another thing that was apparent in the film were beliefs about the conception of life, specifically when it begins. So in Mexico, a lot of people tend to believe that life begins at conception, which is pretty similar with a lot of people in America as well. We kind of have that controversy where we don't know whether it begins at birth or conception. Um, in the film, there's a scene where Cleo gives birth to a stillborn and she's pretty upset about it, which kind of demonstrates that belief. Um, I, and then as well, there's a lot of family closeness in the film that I think is probably closer than relationships that we have in America. Even people who aren't part of the family, like Cleo and Adela, who are just kind of housekeepers, are treated as family. And another movie that I watched was No Se Aceptan Devoluciones, which translates to No Returns Accepted. So some of the vocabulary that I learned in the film were bravo or valiente, which translates to brave, suficiente, enough, ahorita, right now, miedo, which is fear. Fear is a pretty central theme throughout the movie. The way that they express it is by using the verb tener. So tengo miedo, I have fear. Herida means wound, una otra vez, another time. Avión is plane, and guerrero, guerrera, which is warrior. Some cultural nuances I observed in this film were the Acapulco cliff divers. The movie takes place in Acapulco, Mexico, in the beginning and in the end. And there's this cliff called La Quebrada, and people from Acapulco will dive off the cliff. It's a huge tourist attraction and is often seen as like a rite of passage for men to kind of prove that they're growing up and becoming men. Which brings me to my next cultural nuance, which is the machismo and warrior culture in Mexico. So men are often held to a certain standard. There's really strong gender norms that divide men and women in Mexico, as well as a lot of other Latino cultures that is pretty apparent throughout the film. And then lastly, I listen to a lot of Spanish music with my boyfriend, whether that be in the car or cleaning the apartment. And so one of the songs that we've been really enjoying lately is by Carol G and Nicki Minaj. It's called Tusa. Some of the vocabulary that's in it is dímelo, which means tell me, canso, tired, llorando, which is crying. Depresión is depression. Atormente, which means torment. Um, and some of the cultural nuances found in this film. So Carol G is a Colombian artist. Tusa actually it's a slang term for someone who is hung up over their ex. And this is in some other Latino cultures as well. And another thing that I noticed, because in some of the other songs I listen to, like more Prohibido by Selena, a lot of the songs are about love in Spanish, and that's a pretty central theme that I noticed in a lot of the songs that I listen to. And that is it for my Spanish cultural contact and language presentation. Thank you so much for listening.